Not bad at all. I think I'm doing okay with that now. I only have about 15 seconds worth of that music, so I have to time precisely when I want to press the turn down button. And hopefully when I listen on playback that sounds alright. But for now, I'm pretty happy with that. Hello again, everyone out there in the digital world. Welcome back to another episode of Spliced In Later. Here with your host, Jordan Elam. Yeah, that's my last name. Please don't Google me, because you won't find anything. But Google Spliced In Later if you like, because that's getting a bit of an online presence. I believe I'm up to 12 subscribers on YouTube. Thank you, those 12 people. My Instagram's done a big makeover. It's called Spliced In Later, if you want to follow me on there. And of course, if you're listening on Spotify as well, on the internet, welcome back once again. Happy to have you. Today's episode 5. 5 episodes. I'm very excited to reach number 5. When I made episode 1, I didn't think I would make an episode 2. So it's very exciting to be here and to be talking with you all once again. For today's episode, as I mentioned last week, I wanted to discuss a TV miniseries that I believe not too many people have heard about. I do enjoy trying to bring some tidbits of things you have not heard of, so you can go out and sample some new film and TV, rather than talking about Iron Man 500 times. A sneak preview though, in a month coming I will be spending a whole month just talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And there is no shame in that, so look forward to that. It's going to be a very extensive look into how much I love those movies and that franchise and what they mean to me. I'm sure Martin Scorsese, if you're listening, you will enjoy that episode. Don't worry, my friend, that's coming just for you. But the TV miniseries I want to talk about to you today is called Anzacs. And before I get started on Anzacs, the reason why I'm talking about it is I want to talk about Australian cinema and how Australians are portrayed on the big screen or on film and TV in general, whether it's an Australian production or an American production using Australian characters. Because my birthday rolled around recently, and one of the movies that was given to me was The Man from Snowy River. I'm sure 100% of my listeners are Australian, but if you're not, or if you are and you're just not really versed in Australian history, The Man from Snowy River is a movie based on a poem by a very famous Australian poet called Banjo Paterson. If you would like to know who Banjo Paterson is, if you've got a wallet, open it up. If you're carrying cash on you, he's the man on the $10 note. He's the only person on Australian money besides the Queen who I can remember. Because of that slouch hat, he looks mighty fine in it. But I was talking to a friend and I told him that I'd got The Man from Snowy River and I had watched it and I enjoyed it. And they replied, and I will paraphrase here, "That's such a boring film. In fact, most films made in Australia about Australia, particularly back in that time period of the 80s, are just so boring. You can't sit through them. You want to fall asleep. Everybody looks so fake. Can't handle it. Unsubscribe." Again, that's a paraphrase, but the gist is still there. And that made me a little sad because, as I spoke about last episode with 3 idiots, there's that stigma of film reflecting the nationality of where it's coming from and how some people just won't give it the time of day. Nothing against American films and American production, but it does have such a strong hold on the amount of film that we consume in today's society. A lot of times when a new year is coming around, I like to jump onto Wikipedia and essentially, in an obsessive way, plan out my year of all the films that are coming out. I'll note down the dates. So I'm prepared. I like to organize movie outings with my friends. So to really plan that out is a lot of fun in an obsessive way. But with 2020 coming up, I jumped on to sort of get an early idea of what I was going to plan out. And the pages have been changed to country specific. So the main page now is just American films. If you want to look to see what movies are coming out from England or Australia or anywhere else, you have to click on a sublink and read for a whole other list. It requires more effort from me to track down these movies, so don't get me wrong, I enjoy doing it. But again, that's the thing. America is the film world. Everything else, sure, we'll take a glance at it. Luckily, being in Australia, we do get access to the Australian films, but even then, you have to track down a cinema that is showing that movie for about one session on a Sunday every week. Unfortunately, it does get hidden by all the big American franchises. It's a catch-22 for me because I also do love the American franchises. You'll find there's very little I don't like. But it just makes me a little sad that perhaps the reason why people think these things are so boring or not interesting is because they just don't have the access to them. And they're just not interested to go back and have a look as well. In general as well, I think Australians have a sort of stigma about them thanks to the Crocodile Dundee movies. If you're unfamiliar with Crocodile Dundee, let me sum it up for you. You ever seen the Simpsons episode where Bart and Co go to Australia? That entire episode is basically influenced by the Crocodile Dundee movie. That's not a knife, this is a knife. Little kick in the bum, whole thing. Now, the Crocodile Dundee movies are enjoyable. They're a lot of fun. And they are Australian made. It's just unfortunate that the Crocodile Dundee character as itself is an exaggeration of what an Australian actually is. As much bush as we do have out, as much as we have all the farmers living out there doing their farming thing, I am 100% a city person. I live in a house surrounded by a suburb. There is a city. I don't get out to the bush very often, and I'm okay with that. So it's important to realise that as Australians, we need to embrace our identity, but not become cartoon characters. And that's why I really want to talk about this Anzacs miniseries that I've got coming up here. Anzacs, the miniseries, is a 5-episode retelling of Australian soldiers during World War I. If you're unfamiliar with what Anzac stands for, again, I'd be surprised. I think most of you are Australian, but just in case, it stands for Australian New Zealand Army Corps. And basically there are 5 hour-and-a-half episodes that dictate this single platoon from war breaking out and everybody joining up through the 4 years of absolute hell and bullshit that was the First World War. Characters die, characters come and go. There's stress, drama, horrific views of things that go on in war. And it is a very entertaining thing for a number of reasons. Specifically, it is the best example, I think, of the Australian identity without becoming a cartoon. Now, this was made in the 80s. The 80s was a time where Australian film was very much embracing the larrikinism that I think we are famous for, that sense of mateship. Everybody is a bit cheeky, got a sense of humour, we talk in slang, don't take things too seriously. I believe as a new country, as Australia was, even in the 80s, you're still trying to find that sense of identity. There's that sense of camaraderie. that they really double down on this show. Production-wise, it looks fantastic because this is all filmed in Australia, but you wouldn't really know it watching it because somehow they make the outback of Australia also look like the French front, England cities, mud, trenches, the whole shebang. For something made in the 80s, that is absolutely incredible that it can still look so believable to this day. It has a powerhouse cast of Australian celebrities. Now, when I say Australian celebrities, not too many of them have really branched out outside of Australia. Again, Paul Hogan is in this. He's probably the most famous person that you will know from this thing. He plays a character called Pat Cleary, who is the most Australian of Australian characters in here. But it's also got a lovely list of Andrew Clark, Megan Williams, John Blake, Tony Bonner. Any sort of Australian production, you'll find most of these actors in bit roles, sometimes starring. But again, just because you're not starring in a big American blockbuster film doesn't mean you're not good at your craft and you're not worth the time it is to actually take your performance in and truly appreciate it. Normally shared on Anzac weekend, so I believe it would probably be hard to find. I've got it on DVD, as I do, unfortunately, most things. And when I say unfortunately, I mean fortunately, because boy, do I enjoy having access to something I want to watch whenever I can. I'm not restricted by what the streaming services decide to show for that particular time period. You can order it online. I wouldn't want anyone to rush out and buy anything because I've told them to. But if I were to tell you to buy something, this would definitely be one of those things. Wide range of stories in here. There's stories told at home for the people waiting for these soldiers to come back. There's stories told in the British Parliament. There's an Australian fella that's trying to get the crazy British leaders that are sending all these troops into the most hellish situations to just calm the hell down. More importantly, what I really want to hammer home here is that this is something that nobody knows about because it is not given the time of day. Anzacs, the TV series, Gallipoli, the movie. I had a discussion with someone at work. I wanted to know what they thought the most famous Australian movie was. They said Ned Kelly because the Joker's in it. I would also recommend Ned Kelly. It is also a really great movie. But my task for you, if you take anything away from these little podcasts, is to really have a think. If you are truly into film and TV, you need to go out and experience these things, these TV shows, these independent films. You have to work to see them, but they are worth the time to go out and check them out. Don't let them get buried by the big blockbuster films that are taking up every session in every cinema. Anzacs gets my 8 out of 10. It's hard to sort of watch one episode and then go away. I would highly recommend that you watch it all in one go. Especially as an Australian, I think it's worth checking out to see what this country was capable of in terms of production for film. It's a good history lesson as well, and it is a lovely time. I'm getting close to the end of my period on my podcast thing where I have to decide if I'm going to pay more money for more hours, so I won't make this too long an episode because I really want to focus on getting out a review to you in the next couple of days for the reboot for Charlie's Angels. In a sense of irony, I am topping off this push for more independent stuff by letting you know that I will be seeing a big franchise movie. This podcast is for everything. It's for everyone. We're going to talk about the independent stuff. We're going to talk about the big franchise stuff. It's not saying one is better than the other or one deserves more time than the other. It's simply appreciating film in general as a whole. Thank you all for listening once again. I appreciate you all as always. I appreciate the time you've taken to sit down and listen. Please have a think about Anzacs and The Man from Snowy River, Ned Kelly, Gallipoli. Think about how many Australian films you have seen. Have you seen enough? Do you think they're good? Do you think they're boring? Feel free to let me know through commenting on YouTube, or if you're just out in the street and you want to talk to your friends about it, absolutely. Let's get word of mouth going. Let's see exactly how much Australian content we consume. As always, I love and appreciate all of you. I'll see you in a couple of days for Charlie's Angels. You've been spliced in later. Adios, muchachos. I'll catch you next time.